This is the World Organic News for the week ending 22nd of May 2017. Jon Moore reporting. This week we bring troubling news. The seed bank at Svalbard was flooded. I'm sure we can all understand that mixing seeds and water is not ideal for long-term preservation of said seed stocks. There is, though, much more to this than first meets the eye. Svalbard was the doomsday defence for humanity's food seeds. So far above the Arctic Circle and never above minus 18 degrees C, that's around 0 degrees F, the facility was set up as a set-and-forget operation. The ground temperatures rarely varied, the ground continually frozen. A safe place for our food seeds. All this sounds great, but, and I quote, "The Arctic experienced a preposterously warm winter last season, and the permafrost, which has been thawing in recent years, suddenly began melting at an alarming rate. The region near the seed vault experienced heavy rain when it should have been snowing. The resulting breach at Svalbard is making experts question the fail-safe nature of the vault." End quote. Where are we now? For a start, Svalbard is no longer set and forget. It's monitored daily. The seeds are apparently still safe. It is also worth remembering that Svalbard is not the only seed bank in the world. It is, as a seed library, a lender of last resort. But its collected seeds are also held in other seed banks across the globe. Maybe putting some samples of all our seed types in one place may have been more of an all your eggs in one basket sort of decision. Equally, I can see having everything in one place is great for research and convenience. The water never reached the seed collections, and this is a good thing. Quote, "Water flooded into the entrance tunnel to the vault after the unusual season," The Guardian reported on Friday, March the 19th. Thankfully, the water froze before it reached the seed storage areas. To preserve their viability, seeds are stored at minus 18 degrees C, or just below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. End quote. But perhaps more than the seed-saving implications are the climate change signals this flooding points to. Permafrost is high in contained methane, that is, methane that is locked away from the atmosphere. Methane in the atmosphere is CO2 on steroids. It does, however, wash out of the system relatively quickly. It is gone in a few years, not a few centuries, as is the case with CO2. So to the big question. Was the warm weather just experienced in the Northern Hemisphere a one-off, or a sign of things to come? At this stage, there is no way to tell. Nature of these things is multivariable and difficult to predict. What I've noticed in the past 12 months is a strange slowing of weather events. Last southern summer, when the permafrost was melting in the Northern Hemisphere, we in Australia were subject twice to a series of low-pressure systems, lining up from the northwest to the southeast. These had the effect of funneling desert air, which is, not surprisingly, hot, down from the deserts into New South Wales. Temperatures of 46 degrees C or around 115 degrees F, into regions where this is not common. Yes, we've had hot spells before, but this was different. The system stayed in place for days, almost a week. In the past, a hot spell of around 40 to 42 would last a couple of days or so, and then we'd be hit with a southerly cold change. Not this time. The system broke down slowly, and temperatures returned to normal, in air quotes, temperatures of 30 to 35 degrees C. We are now in autumn, and a similar slowdown in systems is occurring. We were fortunate last weekend that the predicted systems bringing rain drifted offshore before dumping a month's average rainfall in a day. We still had rain, but most of it fell over the ocean. The point here was the forecast for an extremely slow-moving system again. Opposite ends of the world, Norway and Australia, changes in weather patterns. Anecdotal evidence, not data, yet. Toss in the rising sea levels and relocation of peoples in low-lying Pacific islands and the Maldives in the Indian Ocean, we probably have enough effects to start actually marching in the streets to force our politicians to get off their behinds and make some actual decisions for our good, not the good of lobbying vested interests stuck in the world of fossil fuels, industrial agriculture and subsidies. A further piece in the puzzle fell into place for me back in January. I was watching a news report on farming, and this farmer, a fourth generation, on the same piece of land, stated that he and his dad used to start silage cutting in the first week in November. He now starts in the last week of August, 10 weeks earlier. Just let that sink in for a moment. 10 weeks. Pasture growth has changed so much he starts harvesting feed for next winter 10 weeks earlier than he or his father had ever done before. I think there are sufficient signs for us to take action. Svalbard may have been set up as our seed bank of last resort. The thawing of the permafrost and the flooding of the entrance may be of even greater value to us as a species. It may, nay, it should be the last warning we need to actually redesign, rebuild, and renew our ways of doing things. Yet the world is preoccupied with the childish tantrums of North Korea and US politics, the Middle East, and any number of other power plays. Yet these pale into insignificance before the bigger picture the flooded and frozen entrance to a remote seed bank has revealed. To repeat someone else's words, and I don't know who or I would acknowledge them, maybe it's time to stop fighting over who created the earth and start fighting those who are destroying our life support systems. And on that thought, we will end this week's episode. If you've liked what you've heard, please tell everyone you know any way you can. I'd also really appreciate a review on iTunes or the podcatcher of your choice. This may or may not help others to find us, but it gives this podcast an enormous thrill. Thanks in advance. Any questions, feedback or criticisms of the podcast or blog are most welcome. Email me at podcast@worldorganicnews.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back in a week.